Thanks for tuning in to more college football talk on the OFN Today as we talk about the AAC. That's right, that's the American Athletic Conference. And we're going to do that with Dan Morrison. He is the AAC writer for UnderdogDynasty.com. And Dan, good to have an opportunity to talk some AAC football with you. And also thanks to Eric Henry for the introduction.
Yeah, I'm always excited to talk AAC football. I love the conference, and Eric's a great guy. He's like me, a bit of a UCF guy, so you get that little connection that we've always had since I started up with Underdog Dynasty.
Okay. Yeah, well, UCF is now we're down to three coaches. Well, really, George O'Leary kind of started everything, right? And then is that really where it
Yeah,
started?
I mean, you can go back further to like Gene McDowell if you really want to, but he was there when they went to FBS, and Dante Culpepper was the quarterback way back late '90s. But yeah, George O'Leary came in 2004, had a winless season, and then put a lot of effort into developing the program, and he built it up pretty well. He got an indoor practice facility, the first for any FBS team in the state of Florida, over Florida, Miami, Florida State. They all have them now, but UCF had the first. They got an on-campus stadium when O'Leary was there. The bounce house, it's a great experience. It's hotter than the surface of the sun, and it's all made of metal, but it's incredibly fun, especially for a nice night game when it gets a little cooler. And he built all that stuff up. 2013 was when Blake Bortles was there. They went and won the Fiesta Bowl over Baylor and Bryce Petty, that team. Then by 2015, the wheels kind of came off, and they went winless again. So O'Leary started winless, he ended winless, but in between, he had a lot of really good success. Frost came in the year after that, and by 2017, he had them back to being in the Peach Bowl, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and now he's struggling at Nebraska. So then Josh Heupel takes the job now in Tennessee, and that's now people are going to monitor that closely, because if Heupel has the same kind of failure that Scott Frost had at Nebraska, people are going to be going, well, what's going on here? And Gus Malzahn, who's taken over, I mean, we know that he has, after coaching at Auburn for so long, you would have to feel that he's in a position, maybe I'm wrong, where he wants to still use this as an opportunity for another Power 5 job down the road. But maybe he's better off just staying there if he has the type of success that Heupel and Frost had.
Oh, I definitely think he's better off staying long term. At his age now, say he has to do 2-3 years of recovery at UCF before he gets that second opportunity. Do you really want to jump into a high pressure, let's say, I don't know who might open up, say Ole Miss opens up for whatever reason. Do you really want to jump back into that at the age of 60 something?
You're right.
I don't know that I would.
Yeah.
It's not like UCF isn't paying him a couple $1 million a year to, live in Orlando. It's not a bad gig.
And he's got all the money he needs, so.
Oh yeah, that buyout from Auburn was just ridiculous.
Yeah. So yeah. And it's is there, we can kind of start with UCF. They're coming off a very disappointing 6-4 season based on their previous seasons. But you bring Dillon Gabriel back, and that's a really good starting point. The expectations are a lot higher after the 6-4 season. And what about the changes with Malzahn?
Yeah, I think the first thing you mentioned, Dillon Gabriel, everyone's interested to see how he fits Malzahn's system on offense, because it's still the spread offense, but it's also a completely different variation than what Heupel did. What Heupel likes to do is he likes to spread you out to the defense, that is, until it's a paper thin defense, and then just exploit the mismatches with speed. A lot of that means a lot of just like go routes and quick comeback routes. There's not a lot of intricacies to it. He doesn't like to throw over the middle. If he goes up the middle, it's just because they read the box and said, okay, we've got numbers, we're going to hand it off, and it's a pretty basic run system as well. And it worked well for UCF for the most part, because being where they're located, they just have naturally better athletes.
Yes.
It's also why they couldn't beat Cincinnati really under Josh Heupel, because they didn't have the better athletes when they played Cincinnati. Luke Fickell's recruited at such a great level. Their secondary is incredible. They could go and man up and beat UCF's receivers, and that's where the issues came in. But because of that, people are interested to see what Malzahn does, because Malzahn likes a running quarterback. Can Dillon Gabriel run with the ball? He absolutely can. A lot of people don't realize it. Dillon Gabriel was a commit to Army before he committed to UCF.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Yeah, no, and late in the cycle, he got offers from Georgia and USC as well. So it's not he's a guy who had a kind of odd recruitment if you think about it, but he absolutely can run the ball if need be. He's just a better thrower. He's shown he can throw a good deep ball now. He just needs to show that he can read a defense a little bit better post snap rather than pre snap.
Okay, so what are your expectations as far as a timeline for Central Florida this year and the next couple of years?
I think they're going to be good this year. I think you're going to see the wins losses bounce back a little bit. It's a pretty easy schedule, all things considered. Boise State, week from well, not even a week from us anymore. It's going to be next Thursday.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah,
nice
I think
game.
that's going to be. Oh yeah, it's at home. I think it's the hardest out of conference game that they're going to have. But I do think they can win that one because I think their offense is going to be explosive enough and be able to ride that home energy. Then they have to go to Louisville a little bit after that. They host FIU, and they've got Bethune-Cookman on the schedule. So not a ton of challenges after that, in my opinion. I know Louisville's ACC, but I'm not so high on them. Uh, then you get in conference. Yeah, Cincinnati is going to be tough. I think Memphis is down this year, and SMU will be tough. But I think 8, 9, 10 wins right around there is where you should expect them to be, and wouldn't be surprised if they're a little bit better this year.
Okay, now let's talk about that Cincinnati program because they are at an all-time high that I can recall for Cincinnati Bearcats football, and Luke Fickell has done a tremendous job. He had a huge season last year. So, are they ready now? Even everybody talks about, look, we had this whole conversation with Central Florida. We've had it with Boise State. The whole idea about one of these teams getting into a playoff kind of deal. Unfortunately, look, it's good you look at the schedule and you see Indiana and Notre Dame. That is good because at least Indiana is now a top 20 team. Notre Dame went to the playoffs last year. So if Cincinnati runs the table, does Cincinnati get into the playoffs?
No, they don't, because they're just not going to be let in. It's, I mean, they can move the goalposts all they want. Right now, they're saying, well, you just have to have been coming off an undefeated season, have 3 or 4 great Power Five opponents on the schedule next year, beat them all, and then we'll let you in. And if Cincinnati does that this year, they're going to go, well, we were just kidding about that. You forgot about all these other
Yeah.
things. So no, that's just not a thing that they're going to let happen. If they get the sense that Cincinnati is going to be pushing for it, say Cincinnati gets through Notre Dame and Indiana, and then just would have UCF, SMU, and a couple other conference games on their schedule to get through, you're going to notice them slide in the standings a little bit for some random reason. Meanwhile, a 1-loss Georgia will jump ahead of them, or a 2-loss, whoever. It's
Sure.
time and time again we've seen it. I know that this is what they say you always have to do to get there. I don't believe it though.
Well, the good thing is also is that in a way it's good, and I say it is because both games are on the road. So it's even harder for them. So you're supposed to give them even more credit by them going on the road if they were to win those games. I get what you're saying, and I think that look, I don't think a 2-loss team would. It all depends on how good Notre Dame and Indiana are if they were to beat them. Like if Notre Dame doesn't lose another game.
Yeah. Well, that's part of it. I'm also not convinced Notre Dame's as good as they were the past couple
That's
seasons.
true too.
Jack Cohn's fine, but he's not going to be as good as Ian Book.
What do you think? And because I know you cover Notre Dame too, so what's your prognosis for Notre Dame this year then?
I think about 9-3, 10-2.
Okay, so
and I
a
think
big
that's
step down,
perfectly fine.
basically.
But yeah, I don't. They've got 4 offensive linemen. Not to break into Notre Dame on our AAC thing, but they've got 4 offensive linemen who are coming, who need to be replaced. A new quarterback. Their wide receivers were pretty bad last year. I really like the defense and what's going on over there. There's a whole interesting storyline. Cincinnati's defense coordinator is now Notre Dame's defense coordinator for this season. I don't love their corners at the same time. The talent's there. It's just a little bit more raw than it was the past couple of years.
Okay.
I think they dropped one of those games to a Wisconsin, to a North Carolina type team.
So it's one of those transition years that Notre Dame's getting, and then they hope their quarterback will develop into a good quarterback, and they'll be a better team for it in 2022.
Yeah, think like 2017 or 2019 Notre Dame. Don't think 2018 or 2020.
Okay.
That's all.
Well, yeah, then that could definitely be an issue. But first things first, and that is winning the conference again and continuing this uphill trajectory that they're on. And Ritter, he has what, one more year after this of eligibility?
It's
I know
tricky
it's tricky.
because
Yes, it's always everybody's
everyone got a
confused.
free one. He will be this is his fourth year as the starter at Cincinnati. Last year was a freebie, so yeah, he technically has 2 more years of eligibility,
Okay, and
including this season.
is this?
I
Well, let me ask you: is this it? Is this the best chance that they have this year, next year, with all the talent they have?
Yeah, I mean they've got a couple good kids at quarterback behind him, but you just don't know until you see it on the
Sure.
field. And even Ritter in his first year needed time to really
Yep.
get his feet under him.
Yep.
And even as early as the Army game last year, there was questions about whether or not Ritter could be the long-term guy. So, and, it takes time for some guys to become that quarterback. You also have to look at their defense. That secondary is as good as ever at corner. They've got this guy Myjai Sanders on the defensive line who's going to compete for the defensive conference player of the year.
Okay.
You're not going to necessarily have all that talent next year. So you got to strike while the iron's hot if you're Cincinnati.
How many pro defenders do they have now? Sanders is at the top of the list. Who else?
Kobe Bryant's up there among Green. They've probably got 2 corners and a defensive end for sure on the roster right now.
Bryant and Gardner?
Yeah,
and
the
Sanders.
secondary.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say for sure those 3.
All right. Let's now talk a little bit about Houston here. Holgorsen, things have not gone so well so far for Dana Holgorsen. 7-13. People are really shocked that he took the job in the first place, and now things aren't going so well. Why do you think they're struggling the first couple of years there?
He's had 2 really weird years in his defense. The first year was 2019. He came in there, and that was the first year where you could play up to 4 games and still qualify for a red shirt. After 4 games, they were 2-2, and they had just lost this heartbreaking Thursday night game at Tulane, where Tulane ran the annexation of Puerto Rico play from the Little Giants, and then followed up with like a tip pass touchdown for like 60 yards to win the game. And it was an incredible, incredible game. But he kind of looked around and said, man, these guys don't really have it yet. They don't know the system yet, but we've got all this talent on our offense. I really want them to stick around and like just take the time to learn it. So he put red shirts on, the top receivers, the top running backs, and Derek King, the quarterback. Then in January, Derek King said, "No, I'm going to transfer," and he threw away his first season for a guy who said, "No, I'm going to transfer," and it just kind of reset everything. Then the next year's the pandemic, and Houston had a really tough start to the season, even trying to find a game. I think it was like October before they got their first game,
Okay.
and that wasn't because the AAC canceled games. It was because Houston's opponents kept having to cancel.
Okay.
So last year was just a little bit of a weird year, but now, yeah, year 3, these are your guys. There's no more excuses. It's time to start to show the proof of concept at Houston. I don't necessarily believe Clayton Tune's the quarterback to do that. He's okay,
Yeah.
but he's not a quick enough decision maker behind an offensive line that needs to improve.
Is there a quarterback then that you think that is possibly ready to take over, or you think that's an
No,
open question now?
Clayton Tune's the guy this year. They don't have
They're gonna
anyone
go back
behind
to
him.
him. Okay.
I don't. They don't have any other option. I don't think, unless something drastic has been happening behind the scenes that I'm not privy to. But no, he's the guy this year. I just don't see him as being more than an average college quarterback.
And they start off with Texas Tech and at Rice, so those are
They'll win
not
both
gimme
those.
games at all. So
I mean, Texas Tech's going to be interesting, but they'll beat Rice.
they better.
Oh yeah, got to beat Conference USA teams if you're in the American. It's just one of those.
Yeah.
The same way Big 12 teams expect to beat AAC teams. Whether or not you always do is another question, but you're supposed to.
Yeah, I mean, because Sun Belt had the big breakout year last year. Matter of fact, even Phil Steele's magazine has moved Conference USA down to the very end of the magazine now.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, the Sun Belt's definitely improving pretty quick, and Conference USA's got a lot of internal issues that they got to work on.
Yeah. All right, SMU, Sonny Dykes, who's done a really good job with the program, but he loses Shane Buechele. So that's a huge loss. Mm-hmm. How are they going to remedy that?
Yeah, so there's 2 guys on the roster right now to look at to remedy that. The first is Tanner Mordecai, who I believe is going to be your primary starter this year. He is an Oklahoma transfer. The most people may know him for is during the Red River game last year when Lincoln Riley sat Spencer Rattler down for being a little bit erratic with the ball. Tanner Mordecai is the guy who went in for him.
Okay.
He looked pretty good when he played. It was mostly in blowout situations, but he just, he's one of those guys who read the writing on the wall and said, I'm not going to get around to playing at Oklahoma. I'm going to go find a place where I can.
Okay.
The other guy is going to be a true freshman, Preston Stone, 4-star guy, really highly regarded quarterback prospect. I think Mordecai is the guy because of his experience, but both of them should bring plenty of potential to the role.
And Dykes has really done an excellent job there because it wasn't that long ago. And I'm not talking about the death penalty years, but I'm just talking about, even just, I don't even know how many years ago things weren't going very well, but he's a really good coach, and I'm really happy to see the way things are going there. But it's when you make that transition from a quarterback that's been there basically the entire time he's there, now is the next step. But it sounds like maybe they've got another really good quarterback, so that was a huge get for him.
Yeah, definitely. I think they're in pretty good shape offensively. I think they've got as good as a skills core as you can hope for. The only question at SMU is if they can figure out the defensive side of the ball. They've got a new D coordinator in Jim Leavitt. They're hoping that he fixes a lot of their issues, but you can't survive a 12-game season when every game's 49 to 45. You're going to lose, and that's how they've been living the past couple of years. And they're going to try to fix that.
And Ulysses Bentley, he's their top player right now.
Top returning player, maybe Reggie Roberson if you like him at wide receiver, but he's coming off an injury, if I'm not mistaken, an ACL. So, Ulysses Bentley was a 1,000-yard rusher last year as a freshman. Absolutely could be, I think, 1,500 yards all-purpose. That's receiving and rushing this year. Definitely a guy to watch. It's an air raid offense by its nature, but they give it to him plenty of times out of the backfield.
Okay, now Memphis. You touched up on them just for a second before. Ryan Silverfield had a very successful first year last year for Memphis at 8-3. They move on finally at quarterback. Grant Gunnell, the Arizona transfer, he's going to be the guy?
Yeah, he's going to be the guy. He won't be as good as Brady White was, at least not at first. You're going to, unfortunately for them, I think you do see a step back this year. They've got a lot of guys who have either transferred out or just moved on for one reason or the other. Kenny Gainwell, for instance, is a guy who's moved on. He was a running back. They still have, some good skills talent on offense, but I don't think it's the same level it has been in past years. I think there's going to be a little bit, just a little rough patch this year, a little step back before a step forward.
Did you like the hire of Silverfield?
It made sense to me. You go internal hire when you've had that kind of success always makes sense to me. He was I want to say the assistant head coach under, no, I'm blanking on his name, Mike Norvell. And, that's a good idea normally to kind of keep that consistency. Sure. It was a little surprising to me how many guys transferred out this year, though, which tells me it may not be as consistent as they had hoped.
That's true. All right, Tulsa's next. And Philip Montgomery, boy, it was a struggle there for a little bit. He had that big, 2016. And then all of a sudden, a combined 9 wins in 3 seasons heading into last year.
Yeah.
But they had a big year last year. The linebacker was phenomenal. They won some dramatic games. What's next now for Tulsa? Because it looks like they've got an opportunity to pick up where they left off.
Yeah, Tulsa first off, give Tulsa all the credit. They've got incredibly strong offensive and defensive lines, 2 of the better in the conference on either side of the ball. They're going to be excellent in the trenches every game. But they've got a few major pieces to replace. They need a new quarterback for one. Zach Smith has graduated. He's gone. Davis Brin's going to be the guy going forward. What does he bring to the table? It's kind of an unknown. He's been on the team a couple of years as a backup. The other option was Seth Boomer, another guy who we saw a little bit more of because he started at one point for Tulsa, and he was not good when he started, is the polite way to put it. Zaven Collins, you touched on, he was absolutely the best defensive player in the conference. He's on the Arizona Cardinals now. They also, and this is pretty important too, that a lot of people I think overlooked, Caleb Evans and Willie Green both transferred out from Missouri. They lost their top 2 corners as well this offseason, which is going to impact their ability to stop the passing game, especially quick passing.
Okay.
So really, Tulsa's probably the hardest team to judge before the season in the entire conference. How do they replace the quarterback? How do they replace that back-end talent on defense? Hard to say, but they'll be good in the trenches.
Yeah, because Brin came in and had that big miracle win, and then we really didn't see him the rest of the year, right?
Yeah, because Zach Smith was always the guy, but he, I believe he got banged up that game. It wasn't a lack of performance that they pulled him on,
Well, I mean, maybe like you said, you never know with these young quarterbacks. So hopefully, if you're a Tulsa fan, Brin's the guy. And that schedule, Oklahoma State and
Tough
Ohio
wasn't.
State is that's
Yeah,
not good.
it's tough. No, going to the horseshoe's never fun. It's going to look ugly out of conference for them,
Yeah, you don't
unfortunately.
want to get beat up in games like that. So, all right, next up, East Carolina. And record-wise, things did not go well for them. And so far, Mike Houston just 7-14. But I don't know. There's still. I like what I see. I think that
Mhm.
there's some hope there. I think Mike Houston's the right guy. The quarterback, though, I mean, he's been there. It feels like forever. It's time for him to maybe take
Mhm.
another step up if it's possible. And if he does, then maybe East Carolina can go bowling.
Yeah, I'm high on East Carolina this year, as high as you can be. I think that is about 6-6 though. Uh, Mike Houston is the guy, in my opinion. I completely agree with you. For those who don't know, he's the former James Madison coach who won a national championship there at the FCS level. Really great coach. Walked into a really terrible situation where there was not AAC talent on that roster when he got there. He had to do a complete reset. He was lucky to have Holton Ahlers, who has been the quarterback for this will be his fourth year as their starting quarterback, just like Desmond Ritter. Unlike Ritter, though, he's never found consistency. Part of that's the offensive line he's played behind. Part of it's the changing coaches. But you'll get 1 week where Holton Ahlers throws for 300 yards and
Yeah.
runs for 100, and the next week where he's got like a 30% completion percent and he can't get past 100 yards. It's kind of incredible to watch what you don't know what you're getting from him. Like you mentioned, they have to put it all together. He's a senior now. If he can just be a solid quarterback week to week, I think they'll win some games. I like their secondary a lot. The defensive line's not going to be able to stop a nosebleed, though.
Well, they have a pretty tough way to start the season because they have to take on App State, then South
Yep, no fun.
Carolina, and then they go on the road at Marshall, which is never easy. So that's a tough way to start the season.
Yeah, it is tough. South Carolina's down, but they're still an SEC school with SEC talent. Marshall's got a new head coach, but we saw what they were last year. There's a lot of talent there and a lot of potential. And App State's always around 10 wins, and that App State game's so important too, just for recruiting in the state of North Carolina. Part of why you've seen ECU drop off in the last decade or so, besides a really bad hire in Scotty Montgomery, frankly, is that teams like App State and Charlotte have joined the ranks of the FBS, and all of a sudden, all these all these players, I should say, that they're able to scoop up as the top G5 level talent in that
Okay.
state, they just can't get anymore, or they have to go and compete against App State with. It's not as easy to recruit for them, and that's really affected their ability going forward, I think.
Okay. Well, look, it's tough, but it's actually a nice way, a nice proving ground to see where the program is. Because if this is going to be a good year for East Carolina, then maybe it's possible for them to steal a win and maybe go 2-1. It's possible.
Yeah, I think they need to get 2 wins out of conference to really set themselves up for success in conference because they're still not going to be able to compete with those UCFs or Cincinnati's in the conference. They're going to have to try to get their wins against the, Temples, the Navies, the USFs.
Okay, Tulane. Willie Fritz has done a nice job at Tulane. But maybe it's time to see if they can get to another level. I'm not sure if that's possible or not, but what do you think?
Not this season.
What's that?
I
Not
said
this
not
season.
this season.
Is that they got who's going to be their quarterback?
It's their schedule. Michael Pratt is going to be their quarterback. He's going to be a sophomore, true sophomore. I really like him. A lot of capability. He last year flashed potential and flashed a lot of freshman mistakes, like a pick six in overtime against Tulsa to lose. Stuff like that he's got to clean up. I think he will. He's got some good weapons around him on that offense. New OC, there's Chip Long. He was the best offense coordinator under Brian Kelly during at Notre Dame. He unfortunately, there was some conflict between him and the other coaches that led to him leaving. It wasn't a talent thing, it wasn't a success thing. He's there now. I think they're going to be very good on offense. I think the defense has a lot of nice pieces, especially at linebacker. A couple really good defensive linemen to replace. I just think that schedule is going to prevent them from getting much higher than 7 wins this year.
Yeah.
They host Oklahoma week 1. They have to go to Ole Miss. UAB is a tough out from Conference USA. It's a tough out of conference schedule. That's all.
Real tough. Okay, next up, Navy. And what is this, year 14 for?
Yeah, Ken Niumatalolo's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah,
I
but
don't.
they have struggled the last few years. They had sandwiched, between an 11-win season, they had those they're 17 and 19 over the last 3 years. It's always about
Yeah,
getting a quarterback there that can run that triple option.
exactly. And last year they didn't have one. I don't have the number in front of me right now, but there was something like Malcolm Perry in 2019 ran for 2,000 yards and threw for 1,000 more. 2,000 plus, 1,000 plus. Last year, there were three quarterbacks who played through for like 700 yards and 250 total yards all
Yeah.
season, and that was the
Yeah.
difference between the 2 years. Uh, I think they're going to be better this year than last year, but I don't know how much that's going to show up in the win losses because it is another tough schedule. When we talk about tough schedules, they might have one of the 2 or 3 toughest in the American this year. They've got a really awful stretch for them between bye weeks where they go like Houston, UCF, Tulsa, Cincinnati. I want to say SMU or Memphis, and then Notre Dame. Not to mention Army has been excellent. But I think they've got a quarterback now. He's just young and needs time to develop a little bit more. Xavier Arline, I really like his athletic ability. I like him as a runner a lot. It was clear last year he wasn't super comfortable running the triple option and making those decisions quick enough, but he's got the athletic ability to do so. He was like the number 5 lacrosse recruit in the country as well.
Okay.
He plays lacrosse at Navy. He was going to go to North Carolina until the new staff took over and said they don't want a lacrosse player on the team.
Right.
And but all the academies wanted him, so I think that he's going to be a guy who can develop into that
All right.
role.
Well, we all know that's big. If they can find a dangerous quarterback, then maybe he's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
If not, it's ugly. Okay, the bottom of this conference in South Florida, they were at the top. It seems like forever ago, because I don't know what's going on with the program. What was it? 2017 when they had one of their really back-to-back good years, but since then it hasn't gone well. Jeff Scott, year 2. You knew he was going to get a good job, or he was at least going to wait and pick his time until he found a good job. He believes South Florida is a good job. So, what's up with South Florida after a 1-win season?
Yeah, it's a complete rebuild there. Last year, I don't think anyone had any expectations for them, and rightfully so, because Charlie Strong, unfortunately, kind of did them no favors as he left the door. He was not recruiting at a near high enough level. The talent is low, and Jeff Scott just didn't inherit much. Going into year 2, the expectations are still going to be pretty low. Unfortunately, there's just not anything there in terms. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's some natural talent, but it doesn't click into place the way it should just yet. It's one of those teams where if you want to see the improvement, you're going to have to actually watch every game, not just check the box scores, because the losses are going to be there. You're going to see loss after loss. You have to watch to see, oh no, but you could see them improving. They were lined up better. They knew what they were doing. They just weren't quite ready for that moment.
Okay. Yeah, schedule I could see is also pretty hard early on, and like you saying,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, NC State on the road, Florida at BYU, at SMU in their first 5 weeks.
Yeah, and they have to go to UCF this year for the War on I-4 game, and that's UCF's won every one of those since 2017 now, so the odds that they can beat UCF are just pretty low at this
Cade
point.
Fortin, is he the quarterback?
Yeah, they announced he's going to be the starter a few days ago. He's a North Carolina transfer. He's got a full year in Jeff Scott's system. The other guy was the Miami transfer, Jaron Williams. A lot of USF fans, I say fans, expected him to be the guy, but no, it's going to be Cade Fortin. Wouldn't be surprised if Williams gets some snaps, but I think Fortin's the best choice.
And then finally, Temple. Wow. You just wondered how long they were going to be able to keep the momentum going. We all remember what a bad program this was not too long ago. Then all of a sudden, last year happened, and you're like, uh-oh, does this mean that they're going back to the old Temple? So this is a big year for the program, isn't it?
Oh, it definitely is, because there's one of 2 ways really to look at last season. Oh, we had really bad COVID luck. It was just a rough, outlier of a year, and we're going to get back to that kind of like 7-5, 8-4 staying point that they kind of have found themselves in the conference with some variation. But another way to look at that is well, you were really terrible last year, and then your starting quarterback transferred away, and you're going to try to fix this with basically only transfers coming into the program, which we've seen other teams do before. You cannot only have transfers. You need to develop your own talent as well. A couple transfers here and there can help, but bringing in 20 transfers and trying to make your entire offense or defense all transfer just doesn't work because they're too hit or miss. It's too much of a guessing game on a transfer. So no, I don't think that. I think you're going to see another step back, and unfortunately, the contract Rod Carey has is kind of a sticking point for them. So I think they're stuck with him for a little while, especially if he doesn't fill it up, figure it out, stuck with him. Because that goes back to when Manny Diaz got hired and then left after like 17 days. They didn't want to be in that situation anymore. They were so sick of being the turnover team. They said, we're going to get a guy that no one wants to coach because the buyout's too high. So they gave him a real high buyout at like $10 million. And I don't think they can afford to pay that to get rid of him now.
I mean, what you liked about what they were doing is they were building an identity on defense at least. And that's why the Manny Diaz thing would have been a really nice hire. That would have kept the tradition going. But I don't know. I mean, if they lose that defensive,
that Temple Tough mentality that they like to brag about. Yeah, and I completely agree. I think that culture is just not ingrained in them right now. And I think that roster is either too young or too new to the program to really still have that. And I just don't think it's going to mesh right this year. I think it's going to be a really long year for them.
Probably. All right. So give me who's your sleeper team?
My sleeper team, I think I like to go with Tulane as my sleeper team. They got a real tough out-of-conference schedule. It's going to make the overall record look kind of rough. But in conference, I think that they're capable of beating almost anyone. They're not capable of beating Cincinnati, but they've got the offensive firepower to compete with just about everyone else.
Okay. And if Cincinnati does not win the conference, who does?
Flip a coin between UCF and SMU.
Oh.
Because I think that UCF SMU is your 2-3 in the conference. Whoever they play late November at SMU, whoever wins that game, I think goes to the conference championship game against Cincinnati. So I think it's going to be one of them. I think in part because they actually have the offensive firepower to outgun Cincinnati. Cincinnati doesn't have a ton of potential to win 40-plus point games. They have to keep you below like 35.
And what's the championship game situation? Is it on a neutral field or a home game situation?
Home field. It's a home field. So they're down to 11 teams in the American since UConn left, so there's no more divisions. It's just the top two conference records with the top overall conference record hosting.
Okay. Do you like that?
Yep. Yeah, I do. I think that the conference championship game on campus is such an electric atmosphere. 2017 UCF Memphis had, UCF, that was a multiple overtime game. It was like 63-56 was the final. Yeah. Incredible atmosphere for that game. Last year was a little bit tough because of the pandemic, but it was at Cincinnati. It was like this 35-degree pouring rain game.
Yeah, that wasn't good.
It's a shame the stadium wasn't full because it would have been a great atmosphere in that miserable weather. And, a little bit of a different game because of that weather and because of the two teams playing, but I think it's always good for the sport to have an on-campus atmosphere. It's one of the most important things. It's the same like those, Chick-fil-A kickoff like games. Those never do it for me because they're just kind of stale. They're not. The atmosphere doesn't feel right.
Okay, best pro prospect in the conference.
Best pro prospect in the conference. That's tricky because everyone kind of knee jerks and will always say a quarterback here. But I really, really like that Cincinnati defense. I really like Myjai Sanders. I mentioned him earlier. I think I'm going to stick with him. I really like him a lot. Defensive end.
All right. Sounds good, Dan. I appreciate it. And you also gave us a little bonus Notre Dame talks, which is not bad.
Exactly. Which is what everyone wants.
Well, that's
Notre Dame talk.
I mean, they're going to be playing Cincinnati. That's a big matchup. So
it is.
But we got to get past Cincinnati's got to get past Indiana first, which is not going to be easy. Indiana's
no.
This is like the best Indiana's been since I can recall. So
yeah, definitely in my lifetime.
Yeah, I think you're right. All right, Dan. So again, we can check you out at underdogdynasty.com, and we also have your Twitter handle up there on the what do you call it? The ticker, Dan_Morrison 96. So Dan, I appreciate it. Whenever there's something really big happening in the AAC, we'll definitely reach out to you.
Absolutely.